My name is Joseph Njiki, a Master of Arts in Theology student at the Real Life Christian College and Seminary. This is a class assignment via video presentation on studies in Daniel. There are 10 questions to be answered in this presentation, and they are as follows. Question 1. What is the significance of Nebuchadnezzar's dream in Daniel 2? And how does Daniel interpret it? 2. How does the story of Daniel in the lion's den in Daniel 6 demonstrate his faithfulness to God? 3. Discuss the symbolism and prophetic elements found in Daniel's visions in Daniel chapter 7 to chapter 12. 4. What lessons can be drawn from the experiences of Daniel and his companions in Babylonian captivity? 5. How does the theme of God's sovereignty and intervention run throughout the book of Daniel? 6. Compare and contrast the characters of Nebuchadnezzar and Belshazzar in the book of Daniel. 7. How does the narrative of the fiery furnace in Daniel chapter 3 reflect themes of faith and obedience? 8. What are some of the challenges Daniel faced while serving in the Babylonian and Persian courts, and how did he navigate them? 9. Discuss the historical context of the book of Daniel and its relevance to understanding prophecy. And 10. How does the story of the writing on the wall in Daniel 5 illustrate the consequences of pride and arrogance? Now the answers to the questions. Question 1. What is the significance of Nebuchadnezzar's dream in Daniel 2, and how does Daniel interpret it? The dream of King Nebuchadnezzar in Daniel 2 is significant because it reveals a panoramic view of future world events and the eventual establishment of God's eternal kingdom. The dream depicts a massive statue with a head of gold, chest of silver, belly of bronze, legs of iron, and feet of iron mixed with clay. This symbolizes 4 successive kingdoms that would arise, starting with Nebuchadnezzar's Babylonian Empire as the head of gold. And Daniel interprets the dream as follows. 1. The Babylonian Empire was represented at the head of gold. 2. The chest of silver represented Medo-Persian Empire. 3. The belly of bronze, the Greek Empire. And 4. Legs of iron, feet of iron and clay, the Roman Empire. The dream culminates in a supernatural rock, God's eternal kingdom, crushing the statue and filling the whole earth. This represents Christ's second coming and the establishment of his unending kingdom. Question 2. How does the story of Daniel in the lion's den in Daniel 6 demonstrate his faithfulness to God? Daniel's unwavering faith in God is demonstrated when he continues praying to God despite a decree forbidding prayer to any god or man other than King Darius. For this, Daniel is thrown into the den of lions, but God miraculously protects him. The king then issues a decree honoring Daniel's God as the living God. Daniel's faithfulness in the face of persecution reflects his commitment to serve God alone. Question 3. Discuss the symbolism and prophetic elements found in Daniel's visions in Daniel chapter 7 to chapter 12. Daniel's vision in Daniel 7 to 12, Daniel chapter 7 to chapter 12, contains symbolic imagery representing 4 kingdoms and events. In chapter 7, we see 4 beasts symbolizing the same 4 kingdoms as in Nebuchadnezzar's dream. In chapter 8, a ram and a goat represent the Medo-Persian and Greek Empire. In chapters 9 to 12, detailed prophecies about the Greek and Roman empires, the Antichrist, and the end times. These visions provide further details and confirmation of the prophetic timeline revealed in chapter 2. Question 4. What lessons can be drawn from the experiences of Daniel and his companions in Babylonian captivity? Daniel and his companions demonstrate several key lessons during their captivity in Babylon. 1. Maintaining faith and obedience to God in a pagan culture. 2. Relying on God for wisdom, understanding, and protection. 3. Using their positions of influence to honor God and serve others. And 4. Interpreting dreams and visions through God's revelation. Their experiences show that God can use his faithful servants in any circumstance to accomplish his purpose. Question 5. How does the theme of God's sovereignty and intervention run throughout the book of Daniel? The book of Daniel emphasizes God's absolute sovereignty over human affairs and history. Despite the exile of the Jewish people, God remains in control, raising up and deposing kings according to his will. Daniel's ability to interpret dreams and visions comes directly from God. The preservation of Daniel and his friends in the face of persecution demonstrates God's power to protect his own people. The book of Daniel affirms that ultimately God's eternal kingdom will triumph over all earthly powers. Question 6. Compare and contrast the characters of Nebuchadnezzar and Belshazzar in the book of Daniel. Nebuchadnezzar and Belshazzar, while both Babylonian kings display contrasting responses to God. Nebuchadnezzar, initially proud and arrogant, but later humbled and acknowledges God's sovereignty. He promotes Daniel and his companions to high positions. However, Belshazzar arrogantly desecrates God's temple vessels at a feast. He receives a message of judgment from God, which Daniel interprets, and loses his kingdom that very night to the Medes and Persians. The two kings illustrate the consequences of pride versus humility before God. Question 7. How does the narrative of the fiery furnace in Daniel 3 reflect themes of faith and obedience? The story of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego in the fiery furnace, Daniel 3, demonstrates their unwavering faith and obedience to God in the face of a life-threatening situation. Refusing to worship Nebuchadnezzar's idol, they declare their trust in God's power to deliver them. Though thrown into the furnace, they emerge unharmed, with a fourth figure seen walking with them, believed to be the pre-incarnate Christ. The narrative affirms that God will protect those who remain faithful to him, even in the midst of persecution and suffering. Question 8. What are some of the challenges Daniel faced while serving in the Babylonian and Persian courts, and how did he navigate them? Daniel and his companions faced several challenges while serving in the Babylonian and Persian courts. 1. Maintaining their Jewish identity and dietary restrictions. 2. Interpreting dreams and visions for pagan kings. 3. Navigating political intrigues and plots against them. And 4. Facing persecution for their faith. However, Daniel consistently responds with wisdom, integrity, and trust in God. His exemplary conduct earned him favor and promotions under multiple kings. Question 9. Discuss the historical context of the book of Daniel and its relevance to understanding prophecy. The book of Daniel is set during the Babylonian exile of the Jewish people in the 6th century BC. It provides important historical context for understanding the rise and fall of empires that would dominate the region. The prophecies in Daniel, especially in chapters 2 and 7, outline a timeline of future kingdoms that would precede the establishment of God's eternal kingdom. This framework helps interpret our biblical prophecies and events leading up to Christ's return. Question 10. How does the story of the writing on the wall in Daniel 5 illustrate the consequences of pride and arrogance? The story of the writing on the wall in Daniel 5 illustrates the consequences of pride and arrogance before God. King Belshazzar arrogantly desecrates the temple vessels from Jerusalem, praising false gods. During a feast, a disembodied hand appeared and writes a message of judgment on the wall. Daniel is summoned to interpret the message, which foretells the fall of Babylon to the Medes and Persians. That very night, Belshazzar is killed and his kingdom is given to Darius the Mede. The narrative underscores that God will not tolerate human pride and will judge those who defy him. Shalom.